Hey guys, it's Fletch. Welcome back. Welcome back to my reloading table out here in the garage. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join me today. We're going to be looking at different types of ammunition to use in your firearms in an SHTF WRL situation. And we're going to look at the theory and the application as well as the philosophy of the use behind it. So stick around, we'll be right back. Well, hello YouTube! Hey guys, it's Fletch. Welcome back to the Fletch BZ MMT channel, previously known as the Big Sky Tactical channel. I now have an actual channel that's, its official name and title is the Big Sky Tactical channel, where all of my gun reviews and training videos and tactical reviews, things like that, will all be over there from now on. And so I'll put a link to it down here so you can check it out if you want to. Tonight I was working on doing some reloading, and I had been watching some really good videos recently by some guys that are extremely knowledgeable, like Main Prepper and some other guys, and they were talking about different kinds of ammunition. And so I wanted to throw in my 2 cents as far as not just necessarily, what type of ammunition, as in, 5.56 by 45 or the 223, or say 7.62 by 39, but whatever round you decide is the right round for you, what type of projectile are you going to be using in it? And there's basically, 3 types. You've got a penetrator type round, you've got a full metal jacket type round, and then you've got an expanding round. And lately I've been experimenting with these little 55 grain, and this is for the 5.56. It's a Hornady Spire Point or soft point. So let me give you guys a little close-up of this. You can see what I'm talking about here. Let me get it in focus on the camera. But as you can see, this it's a 55 grain bullet, which is basically the same thing that you would use in like plinking rounds. Is 55 grain. But as you can see, the tip of that is the lead from the inside of the round. And so when that hit, it expands and mushrooms out immediately. And you truly get explosive results with a round like this. And so if you'll give me a second, I'm going to get out my whiteboard and kind of just go down through what those 3 different fields are, or not fields necessarily, but why there's basically 3 separate classes of rounds, and why you may want to have a little bit of each one of those. Because just like I just recently did a video entitled Bringing Up Hammer, and in that video I talked about the importance of having the right firearm for the job. And in this video we're going to talk about having the right round to use in your firearm. So stick around, I'm going to get out my whiteboard and we'll do a little bit more explaining, so to speak. So we'll be right back. Alright guys, welcome back. Here's the whiteboard, and got some nice gun here to look at. Got the M&P 15 MOE in flat dark earth. But anyways, we're going to be talking about the 3 basic types of ammunition that are out there and available to us as civilians. And yes guys, I know there's some other more quote-unquote exotic things out there, like exploding rounds or mercury rounds or tracers and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. But what we're talking about here guys is basic rounds that you can buy in bulk and that are available to the average Joe 6-pack. Alright, so the first thing I want to talk about is the penetrating round here. And so we put a P up here for the penetrating round. The idea or the concept behind a penetrating round, guys, is that you have a completely, well, not completely, sometimes the bottom is not encased, but the whole upper part of the projectile is. It has a copper case, and typically it's a pretty thick case so that it can burrow into whatever your target is. And then you have a lead core that's around the tungsten a lot of times, or sometimes it's steel. It's going to be some type of a very hard and heavy metal. And the idea or the concept behind a round like this is that when this makes contact with the target, this starts to flatten back, mushroom out on the sides. But this little penetrator piece right here, it's going to retain its energy and it's going to continue driving forward. So as an example, a lot of times in the military they'll use a round like this. So if you're shooting someone that might be wearing a tactical vest and lots of other things like that, that the tip of this will be what breaks through all that, and this penetrator part right here is actually what ends up doing the damage. Now you'll see these advertised as different things like green tips, different names like that, and that's in like 223 or 5.56 by 45. Now you can also find a round like this in 7.62 by 39, another round for the AK-47, or more correctly an AKM or an SKS rifle. Several of the older rounds that are out there actually had a steel or iron core. I don't know exactly what it was, so don't hold me to that, but it was definitely metallic, and if you held a magnet up to it, it would stick to it. And so that was what we call a penetrator round, and the idea or the concept behind it is that it's going to penetrate more layers of whatever it is. It's going to burrow in deeper to whatever you hit. And also, if it doesn't actually go through something really thick, a lot of times a round like this is going to go right through its target. So that's something to think about. Now the next type of basic round there is an FMJ or full metal jacket. Much like the penetrating round, you typically have a copper clad projectile, and the copper on the outside here is going to be a fairly thick copper, so that when you hit your target, again, it'll kind of smash back down into itself, and then it'll start to slough off or mushroom over itself, so that you get both penetration and a mushroom, quote-unquote, effect as it goes in. A round like this will not burrow through as far as a round like this. However, it's still going to go in quite a ways, especially compared to a round like this that we're going to talk about next. But the idea or the concept behind this, again, this is what our military uses, and we're going to talk about the history of that and why it is that way here in a minute. But this is typically what our military uses, is a full metal jacket round in 223, or more correctly, 5.56 by 45. Now the last one I wanted to talk to you about today, guys, is the expanding round. And expanding rounds have lots of different names. You might hear them called spire points, you might hear them called soft points, you might hear them called hollow points, polymer tipped, just lots of different names. And a lot of these names, guys, are marketing ploys, the marketing schemes, so to speak. And we'll talk about those here in a minute, and I'll show you some examples of that. But typically what you'll see is you'll have basically the exact same size. Like all of these could be, say, like a 62 grain or a 55 grain bullet. But in these, basically what you have is you have an open cavity in here. And this open cavity will either be filled with soft lead coming up to a point, like the 55 grain Hornady soft points that I showed you earlier, or some of the newer bullets that are out there, especially like the Hornady line. And you'll see bullets, they're all basically the same bullet, and I'll prove it to you guys here in a minute, but whether it's Z-Max, the Zombie Max round, or the V-Max, V as in Victor, the V-Max round is the exact same thing, as well as the TAP personal defense round. They're all the exact same round. The only difference is you got a different color polymer or plastic insert that goes in here. But the idea, the concept behind a round like this is that if you hit a soft target with something like this, it's just going to literally rip up whatever it hits. And I've got some footage. I'll show you guys what happens if you shoot a jug full of water. Basically what happens with a round like this is as soon as that round hits the water, it completely disintegrates. Okay guys, so what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be shooting 2 milk jugs that are, you know, basically the same milk jug filled with the same amount of water, and the first shot is going to be on the left, and that's going to be with a PMC 55 grain full metal jacket round. This is your typical bulk buy type of ammunition that you would have. So let's see what it does to the milk jug. Alright, so that first shot was the PMC 55 grain full metal jacket. The second shot is going to be a hand load with a Hornady 55 grain spire point or soft point bullet with a hand load of 27 grains of Varget in it. Okay, so here is what happened with the full metal jacket, and the round hit kind of low starting out, so it ripped out the bottom pretty good, and it hit right in here somewhere, and as you can see that it shredded the milk jug in half, so the round definitely passed through. Here is the same 55 grain, but this is a soft point, and the round struck right here where my index finger is. There's a hole. I don't know if you can tell very well in the camera, but it struck right in there, and then everything just exploded and came right back out. And inside of this, you can kind of hear it. The round just exploded once it hit this. So you can kind of see the difference between a penetrating round like a full metal jacket and an expanding round like a soft point. What the difference is going to be for impact. And so obviously a much more devastating effect when a round like this hits a soft target, but you're not going to get as much penetration out of it either. So again, these are the 3 basic types of rounds. You've got a penetrating round that's meant to burrow in very deep, but the danger with a round like that is that you may shoot through your target. The full metal jacket, this is basically a NATO round here. This is what our armed forces and troops basically use. And then you have the expanding round. And it's very devastating if you get hit with a round like this. But the converse of this is that this round will not burrow in deep. It will not penetrate anywhere near as much as these 2 rounds either. Alright guys, welcome back. As you can see, I've added quite a bit more information to the whiteboard here. And the first thing to take note of is, guys, this is not to scale. So for those of you that are, you know, the attention to detail people and you're expecting professional artist drawings and stuff, you're at the wrong place. But I think that the diagrams and the pictures that I've drawn here will kind of give you a pretty good sense anyways of the different bullets or projectiles and how they work. So let's go ahead and get started here talking about the philosophy of use for each one of these different rounds. Let's start over here with the penetrating type rounds. Most of these examples are in 5.56 by 45, which is what the M4 or M forgeries AR-15 type rifles will shoot. And I did include a little bit of 7.62 by 39 as well, but unless I say it's 7.62 by 39, we're talking about 5.56 by 45. which is technically not the same thing as 223. So I know if I don't throw that in there, someone's going to feel like they need to add that. So let's just go ahead and get that up front. Alright, so the first thing that you're going to see quite commonly as far as a penetrating type round goes is the M855. With the M855, you also want to make sure that it says it's the SS109. The SS109 is what is the penetrator that's inside of the round. The round is called the M855, but the SS109 is the projectile that has the penetrator in there. You may also see those marketed or sold as NATO green tip, and that is a penetrating round. It's typically a 62 grain round. And also on that note, guys, if you ever have anyone that offers to sell you black tips, be very leery about that. The black tips are a real armor-piercing type projectile, and they are illegal for civilians to own. So, just something to keep in mind. Alright, so what would be the philosophy of use for a penetrating round? A penetrating round is designed to defeat soft body armor. Typically like level 1 through 3A type of body armor. However, that being said, this really isn't like, some special, oh my gosh, quote-unquote cop killer round, because, any rifle round over a 223 or 5.56 by 45, for the most part, any round that is larger than that is going to be able to penetrate a level 3A body armor anyways. And this green tip round, or the M85 SS109, cannot defeat or penetrate level 3 or 4 body armor. It's not going to happen. You would need a 308 to defeat a level 3, and to defeat level 4, you would need the Big Mac Daddy here in America, the 30-06 with an armor-piercing round. So, just to kind of throw that in there to give you some comparison. However, a green tip, NATO green tip, M855 SS109, will defeat like regular welding steel and things like that. Now, if it's an armor plate, like 500 Bernal armor plate, it's going to put a little bit of a wrinkle on the face of it, maybe a 1/16 of an inch or something like that, but there's no way in heck it's going to go through it. But, so again, the purpose or the idea of the penetrating round is to defeat soft body armor. Now, having said that, if you are in a worst case scenario and you are up against a quasi-military organization and you think that if you have some of these rounds that you're going to take them on, you're probably going to be in for a rude awakening, because they're probably going to make your day really bad really quick. This type of round, the idea or the concept behind it would be like 1 or 2 guys or something like that that look like maybe they have on tactical gear or something like that, a plate carrier, and they might possibly be wearing body armor of some kind. This is the type of round that you would want to use. Now, going to 7.62 by 39 for a minute, the same round that the AK-47 and the SKS shoot. And for all of you aficionados out there, yes, I know, the AK is technically an AKM, so let's just get that out of the way as well. The AKM fires a 7.62 by 39. There are some different rounds that you can still buy. I've noticed that here in the last several months that several of the Russian manufacturers that are sold here in America are getting away from what they call the magnetic rounds, because in a lot of ranges they can't be fired. However, if you can find some of the older rounds that are magnetic, those have basically the same concept as the penetrator. It's not the same thing, yes, I know that, but it's the same concept. Inside the round, you're going to have a steel core that's on the inside of there. And so it's going to be able to burrow down through things very well. I have seen a couple of videos from some people that I know on YouTube, you know, from like maybe 25 yards shooting through 2 4x4 posts, you know, just pass straight through it without hardly even expanding. So again, on 7.62 by 39, if you look for older Wolf, Tula, or Yuli ammo, and specifically look for the stuff that says that it's magnetic and you might not be able to use it on all ranges, that round is going to have more burrowing capabilities, let's just call it. So moving forward, full metal jacket rounds. This would be the XM 193. And you'll also see these advertised as FMJBT, which means full metal jacket boat tail. And the boat tail is the part that goes into the neck of your shell casing here, and the edges are rounded off, and that makes the bullet or the projectile more aerodynamic. It has a higher ballistic coefficient, which basically means it moves through the air easier, so therefore it's more accurate and it flies further, straighter. Typically, on a 16-inch barrel, you're looking at about 3,086 feet per second with a round like this. It's typically a 55 to 62 grain projectile. If it is the XM193, it's going to be a 62. If you're looking for other bulk packs of things that you can buy, like PMC, the Pmc Bronze is a decent, inexpensive bullet. PMC also makes the X-Tac, and the X-Tac is basically the same thing, just that it's 5.56 by 45 instead of 223. Another one that's an inexpensive bulk one that you could get is a Federal Black Box. That's also out there, and it's a 55 grain full metal jacket. And if you'll notice here, I added these little squiggly lines here in there, and what that is that's a cantilever. The purpose of a cantilever on a round like this is it causes the bullet to yaw, or as it starts to go through, something like your bullet would be, or your projectile might be like this, and as it starts passing through material or a barrier, it will start to go off to the side like this, and the cantilever line, the bullet will break and it will disintegrate. So this is typically the type of round that NATO and our armed forces use if they're not using a specialty round like this, because this is a soft body armor defeating round. Alright, now some downsides to either one of these two rounds is that if you live in a metropolitan area, either one of these rounds is going to go through several walls. You know, if all it is, you know, 2 layers of sheetrock and some insulation in between, either one of these rounds is going to just plow right through it as if nothing was there. Even if you hit your target, especially with this round, and maybe even this round, it's going to go right through whatever it is a lot of times. And so just something to be aware of, that, you know, especially this one, but sometimes even this one, it's going to go through whatever your target might be. So keep that in mind. That's why one of the safety rules in shooting is always know your target and what is beyond. Because the downside to either one of these rounds is that because of the fact that they penetrate a lot deeper, many times they'll completely pass through whatever your target is. So keep that in mind. Alright, now the last one that we're looking at here is the expanding rounds. And we talked about this earlier as well. Now, like ZMAX and VMAX and TAP, all of these you're looking at about 3,240 feet per second, but this is out of a 24-inch barrel. So, you know, quite a bit of difference between the 16-inch barrel that this was rated out of and this one. And so, you know, obviously, you know, Hornady wanting to make their numbers look as good as possible by going with, you know, a very long barrel. But anyways, that's what it is, and typically these are a 55 grain projectile. And they do also have a cantilever on them, or cantilever, however you want to say it. And again, we talked about the Z-Max, V-Max, and TAP. These are all basically the exact same thing, just a different marketing. Another name that you might see out there is SP, or Soft Point, or Spire Point. They're basically the same thing, just a different name. All of these rounds here, when you hit something solid, this round is pretty well going to disintegrate. When you hit a target, whatever you may be shooting at, a round like this, because it has a cantilever, plus because you've got an open cavity in here, if this was a cutaway of it, you've got a cantilever here, or no, excuse me, a cantilever, but a cavity here, and inside this cavity it will either be soft lead filled to the top, or it will be plastic. And like in the case of the Z-Max, it's green. If it's V-Max, I believe it's red, and if it's TAP, it's like black. But the idea is that when this round hits, that the plastic pushes back in, it immediately causes this thin copper jacket on both sides to spread out, and then as it starts to yaw, it's typically going to break apart here at the cantilever as well. And I'll show you some footage here after a bit, showing you what happens when a soft point round from Hornady, the same people that make the Z-Max, V-Max, and TAP, when it hits a jug of water, it just completely disintegrates. So a round or projectile like this would be a very good round against soft target. A round like this would probably be a better round or better choice than these, because when a round like this hits a soft target, it's devastating, in my opinion. Now, I'm sure that when enough people have watched this, that you'll start seeing people trying to pick apart what I have said or how I explained it because they don't agree with me or whatever. The purpose of this, guys, isn't to say that I'm all-knowing, that I know everything and that no one else does. The purpose of this is to give people that are new to preparedness, and they want information like this so they know what to do and how to do it, and what's a good choice for rounds for whatever platform that you choose. And here in the States, either 223 or 5.56 by 45, and guys, yes, I know they're not the same thing, okay? Or an AK or an SKS 7.62 by 39. And nowadays, guys, you can get 7.62 by 39 over here in the Z-Max arrangement and Soft Point from several different retailers if you reload them yourself, and you can get the brass for them as well. More expensive, but you can do it. And you can just imagine how devastating a 7.62 by 39 with like one of these Z-Max type bullets in it with a cantilever. So again, as far as the expanding bullets, there's also some other manufacturers out there that make decent expanding bullets. You've got Nosler or Nosler, depending on how you say it where you live. They make, I think they call theirs a varmint bullet or something like that. Remington AccuTip, basically the same thing. Barnes makes some bullets as well that a lot of the Barnes bullets are completely copper, but they're a softer copper, so they'll do a lot of the same characteristics. And Sierra Blitzking is also a very good bullet. It has very good ballistic coefficient. It's very accurate. So the philosophy of use for a round like this is an excellent round for soft targets. People that aren't wearing tactical gear or soft body armor, a round like this is going to be a good option for a soft target. Now, you may be asking, well, there's no way that if things ever get bad, I'm going to know which one of these that I want to use. Well, that may be true and it may not. You may have some warning about what's going to happen and what's coming down. So in your loadout, you may want to have a magazine of either FMJs or penetrators, and then a couple of magazines of expanding rounds. So depending on what your threat is, that you have different ones. Or, you know, if you know that things are looking bad, then you might want to go ahead and load up some of your mags so that you're maybe alternating every other round between, say, like an expanding round and a penetrating round, or a full metal jacket like the XM193 with a cantilever. It's a decent anti-personnel round. So you may alternate back and forth, and you may have a few mags that are set up like this, alternating, and then you may have, like, you know, typically you may have, like, you know, 4 to 6 mags or something like that on your loadout, and then you may have, you know, different markings on your mags so that you know what they are, like, you know, with Z-Max type bullets in there, or FMJs. And guys, just kind of a hint, out of these three right here, these are all basically the exact same thing, but the Z-Max round is the cheapest. Even though it has the exact same ballistic coefficient, if you buy the rounds from Hornady, you know, pre-made, you know, complete rounds, it has the exact same muzzle velocity and everything. All three of these do. But the Z-Max also has the cantilever on it, whereas the V-Max doesn't have the cantilever, but it has the exact same ballistic coefficient. So this is, and the Z-Max is the least expensive out of all of them. So if you can find the Z-Max in a worst case scenario, that would be, in my opinion, would be a very good option for soft targets. Okay guys, so I was just auditing this real quick, and I saw a couple of things that I wanted to point out. So real quick, out of these 4 Hornady products, the Soft Point, which was the precursor to these 3 rounds here, the Soft Point is by far going to be cheaper than any of these. But out of the 3 plastic tipped ones, the Z-Max is going to be the cheapest. I also mentioned that it may be a good idea to alternate in your magazines, like back and forth between like a penetrator and an expanding round. However, if you do that, I would highly, highly, highly recommend that you shoot 2 or 3 magazines full in that configuration, and make sure that your M4 or AR-15 or AK, whatever, can handle that. I know that this rifle here, this M&P 15, can handle it just fine. I've put up to 4 different types of rounds in there. Full metal, 2 different varieties of full metal jackets, some Tula steel cased, and my hand loads, and alternated between all 4. And my rifle anyways can handle that, but you need to make sure that your rifle can also handle that, because it may not. Especially some of the upper echelon ARs that are out there, they could be finicky about the kind of ammunition that they're gonna be able to fire, or that they're going to be able to feed correctly. So whatever you choose, or whatever you think is the best option for you, make sure that you actually try to shoot it out of your AR and make sure that it actually works, because you know, the last thing that you would want to do is just assume that it works, and we all know what happens when we assume things, especially when you might need it the most. I was going to show you these 4 rounds here, all made by Hornady on Hornady.com. However, my computer's not cooperating. My cam studio is not saving my screen capture, and my microphone is all screwed up. So anyways, long story short, the VMAX, the ZMAX, and TAP all have the exact same numbers. They have the same muzzle energy, they have the same trajectory, they have the same ballistic coefficient, they have the same sectional density, and they have the same hits. And if you have any questions on what any of those are, when you're on Hornady.com, look at the resources tab and look at ballistics, and they have walkthroughs that will explain to you what those numbers are and how they work. But basically, each one of these rounds is quote-unquote designed a little differently to fit a little bit different niche, but essentially they are all 3 the same round. The soft point down here is what was available before these three were available. Its ballistic coefficient is a little bit lower. It's these three, the ballistic coefficient is 0.255. The higher the number, the better. The soft point is 0.235. So it is a little bit lower, however, it's not that low to where you're actually going to see a difference between like a full metal jacket, these, and a soft point at like 100 yards or something like that. And I think the latest statistics prove that most, you know, quote-unquote gunfights happen within that type of a range scenario. So, you know, bench rest shooters and things, yeah, you know, they really care about being able to get out, you know, 200-400 yards and different things like that. However, for you and me that are just looking for something that, you know, if the things ever get really bad and, you know, we need something, any of these rounds are going to be a good choice. And a lot of old school guys will try to tell you that the full metal jacket has the best ballistics out of everything that's out there. Well, that used to be the case when you compared it to like a soft point. The ballistic coefficient that Hornady anyways gives their full metal jacket boat tail is 243. Well, 243 is obviously less than 255, however it's better than what a soft point is, which is the old technology, or a hollow point even, that may have been available at the time. So something else to think about if people tell you that. That's not necessarily the case, that's not necessarily true anymore.